Hi everyone, Petrik here. In today's video, I'll be talking about all the books that I finished last month, in the month of March. And it turns out that March was not a super productive reading month for me because I work on a lot of projects and also life, as always, is super busy. But at the same time, I also managed to finish 5 novels. So that's not too bad in my opinion, considering how busy I was. And on top of 5 novels, I managed to finish about 50 volumes of manga. So yeah, I guess you can count that as a bit of productivity, but yeah, not toward books. I'm planning to read more books in the month of April. Hopefully I can succeed in doing that. But yeah, let's talk about all the books that I finished last month. The first one, it was for The Fangs of War by E.J. Doble. This is a debut, a grimdark fantasy debut by a very young author. Relatively young anyway, because I do believe that this book was published when the author was 21 years old. So he was writing this, I think, when he was 18. He began writing this one, I think, when he was 18 years old, and he published it when he was 20 years old. 20 or 21 years old, I cannot remember. But I do think that this is a good grimdark fantasy debut. The beginning do take some time to get used to because this one is told from the perspective of seven main POV characters, and the story constantly shifts around between all of them. So for me, from my experience, every time I start to get attached to one character, or before I even get attached to them, we are already moving forward to another POV character, and this keeps on repeating itself until I get used to them by around the halfway point. Once I reached that point, the rest of the book was a different story. I have posted a full spoiler-free review of this book on my Goodreads and also on my blog, Novel Notion. So if you want to know my full thoughts about that, you can check that out. But if you love grimdark fantasy, you love something with great actions and also siege, brutal conspiracies, and also meddling gods, I think you should try reading The Fangs of War. This one is the first book out of 5 books. Yeah, it is an ambitious series, and there will be novellas in between each book, if I'm not mistaken. Because I do know that I will be reading the prequel novella. The title is The Crown of Omens within this month, and then I will be diving into the sequel most likely next month. And the author has mentioned he planned to release another novella after the second book in the series, The Horns of Grief. I think that is a badass title. But yeah, The Fangs of War was a good book. I read it using the Page and Wick edition, and although I am disappointed with that edition, in my opinion, it was not as good as the price, but the book itself is good, and I really expect the sequel will be even better. I heard from a few trusted friends and reviewers that the sequel, Horns of Grief, is vastly superior compared to The Fangs of War, and I'm excited to dive into that. But first, I'll be reading The Crown of Omens first this month. And then after that, I finished 2 books in the Sun Eater series. But this is not the main novels. This is the companion novels, or the collection of short stories as well. So the first one that I finished, it was Tales of the Sun Eater Volume 3. This is the 3rd collection of short stories in the Sun Eater series by Christopher Ruocchio, one of my top favorite series of all time. And also this one is the best collection of short stories so far, because I have mixed feelings regarding the first collection of short stories, and I felt better about the second collection of short stories, but the first one was the one that I really felt mixed things about. Most of the titles in the first collection of short stories did not really click with me. Tales of the Sun Eater Volume 3 is a different story. This is definitely the best collection of short stories so far in the Sun Eater. I mean, it begins with After the Feast. If you have read the series Up to Kingdoms of Death or Ashes of Man, and I recommend you to do that before you read Tales of the Sun Eater Volume 3, then you will know what After the Feast means. And I really love that this is the opening of the collection. It is a great title. It is a great short story, and I cannot imagine anyone who have read the series Up to Kingdoms of Death not clicking with this one. This is really good, one of the best short stories that I have read, but it is not the best short story in the collection, because even though I enjoyed pretty much all of the titles in this collection of short stories, but my favorite one will have to be the last one, The Daughter of Swords. This one definitely takes place after Ashes of Man. Definitely do not read anything about this title unless you have finished reading that book, the 5th book in the Sun Eater series. Unless you have finished that one, do not search anything about Daughter of Swords. If you have read the series up to the 5th book, The Ashes of Man, then you will know that this is such an incredible short story. I loved it very much, and I might even consider this as mandatory reading before reading Disquiet Gods, the 6th book in the series, because this one takes place as a bridge short story. Not only this one, actually, there are 2 more short stories. The title is The Fangs of War and also The Great Game. I have read all of them in preparation of Disquiet Gods. And not only that, not only Tales of the Sun Eater Volume 3 is the best collection of short stories in the Sun Eater so far, the next companion novel I'll be talking about, The Dregs of Empire, is also the best companion novel in the Sun Eater series so far. And the previous 2 were The Lesser Devil and also Queen Amid Ashes. And with The Dregs of Empire being finished and read, it means I have finally caught up to everything in the Sun Eater. Every book, every short stories, I have read them all, except Disquiet Gods, which I will read most likely next week. I will start Disquiet Gods most likely next week, and then I will leave a full detailed review, spoiler-free review on my YouTube channel after that. But first, The Dregs of Empire. It goes without saying that this, of course, will have to be my favorite companion novel because, as you can see from the cover art here, illustrated by John Barry Balaran, the cover art, this is Lorian Aristides. I have mentioned since my review of Demon in White and then Kingdoms of Death and also Ashes of Man, Lorian Aristides is my favorite supporting characters in the Sun Eater. He is most likely my second favorite character in Sun Eater after Hadrian Marlowe. I just love the display of loyalty that Lorian has toward Hadrian and also the Red Company. And well, I just love reading about underdog characters doing their best to survive with everything they have. In the case of Lorian, his wit and tactics, and I love that. But this one, The Dregs of Empire, he might have to do more than that because Christopher Ruocchio is really pushing Lorian Aristides to the limit in The Dregs of Empire. I cannot talk too much about this one, but just like The Daughter of Swords, The Dregs of Empire takes place after the events in Ashes of Man. It basically takes place really after the final event in that book. So yeah, this one is really mandatory reading if you love Lorian Aristides. I mean, come on, this is Lorian. And the book at 80,000 words long, it is not a novella. This is not like The Lesser Devil or Queen Amid Ashes. This is definitely a short novel. 80,000 words is the size of Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry. And you can definitely expect a lot of content, quite a lot of contents packed into this companion novel, especially regarding the mind, the psyches and feelings of Lorian Aristides toward Hadrian, Valka, and the Red Company, and what he will have to do to survive the ordeals that he's in. But about the importance of Dregs of Empire toward Disquiet Gods and also the 7th and final book of the Sun Eater, and yeah, the title has been revealed, Shadows Upon Time, that will have to be determined after I manage to read Disquiet Gods and of course the final title. But this is a great companion novel regardless, and of course you have to read this one only after you finish reading the main books in the series up to the Ashes of Man. Overall, I really had a great time reading The Dregs of Empire, and I look forward to seeing how the events in this one will play out in the main books later. I gave this one 4.5 out of 5 stars rating. And speaking of Christopher Ruocchio, the next book is pretty much reviewed positively by Christopher Ruocchio himself and also Tad Williams. I'm talking about a book that I recently reviewed on my YouTube channel. This is a debut novel, and this is The Failures by Benjamin Lyer, the first book in the Wonderlands trilogy. So of course, because I have posted a full spoiler-free review of this one on my YouTube channel, if you want to know my full thoughts about it, you can check that video out. But to put it simply, this is an incredibly ambitious and also rewarding SFF debut. It is hard to categorize The Failures. There is so much genre blend into this one. It has fantasy, epic fantasy, sci-fi, and then possibly multiple worlds and also post-apocalypse and horror. All of them are blended into this one book. And it is not an easy book. It is challenging, but at the same time, if you are a fantasy reader who feels that fantasy books lately tend to handhold the readers too much, well, this is the book for you. It will definitely spin the gears of your mind to work, to keep on asking questions, to solve answers, and also to find out all the mysteries behind the world, the plot, and the mysteries of the characters. It is incredible. I did not expect it would be this ambitious. And not gonna lie, I don't expect the failures to hit with a lot of fantasy readers right now because, as I said, this is a challenging reading. The narrative is unconventional, the world building is absolutely intricate, but not easy to digest. But you know what? If you like this kind of story, I think this will be something that is super rewarding to you. And I do hope this gets popular someday because it will be so fun to discuss the theories and everything about the failures. The author has mentioned that he borrowed a lot of elements from other authors to combine them into this one book, one distinct work of art. But from my perspective, I think the closest science fantasy book that I can think of to compare it is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin, and then also Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. And then this is not a book, but Dark Souls, a video game franchise. But ultimately, I think the one that I felt the most, it is Blame by Tsutomu Nihei. Reading The Failures by Benjamin Lyer really reminded me of Blame by Tsutomu Nihei, and I think I should do a second read of that manga series. It has been years, and this book just reminded me again of the goodness and the greatness of Blame by Tsutomu Nihei. But yeah, The Failures is a great book. It's a great science fantasy book, and Christopher Ruocchio and Ted Williams praised it as well. I can definitely understand why they loved it very much, and I look forward to reading the sequel to The Failures whenever it's ready. But right now, I would just say that the book is, well, it is 30 years in the making, and I don't actually know when the sequel will be out. Hopefully, it will be sooner than later, especially because the world building is already established now. I do highly recommend you to at least try reading The Failures. It is definitely one of the nominees for me for the best debut of 2024. And finally, the last book that I finished, it was Stones of Light by Zack, Argyle, the second book in the Threadlight trilogy. This is pretty much like the opposite of The Failures. If The Failures was challenging, demanding, well, Stones of Light is very easy to read. It is short and it doesn't take a lot of brain space to understand everything that went through in Stones of Light. It is definitely a series that is so accessible to newcomer to the fantasy genre. And if you love, again, I need to repeat this, if you love Mistborn and also the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson and also the Magic System of Lightbringer by Brand Wicks, definitely try reading the Threadlight trilogy. It is, as I always say, it is a compact and smaller version of Sanderson's books. And yeah, it is easy to read, and what I love most about Stones of Light is the character development. We do, of course, as expected of a second book of a series, get to learn more about the world and then the gods, a bit more of the magic system, even though I wanted more out of it. But at the end of the day, the best part about Stones of Light is the character development. In the first book, my favorite character was easily Chris Valerian, one of the three main characters of the Threadlight trilogy. But in this one, I have to really say that Alvarax really grew on me. I think the character development of Alvarax in Stones of Light is incredible. He definitely received the most substantial character development in this book. This isn't to say that Chris Valerian's story was not as good as the first book, though. That is not what I'm saying. I mean, Chris was always great in the first book, and he is great again here. Plus, I get to see this scene illustrated by Randy Vargas appeared in Stones of Light. So yeah, Chris and Alvarax were easily the best part of Stones of Light for me. And I know many people told me that Stones of Light was a vastly superior book compared to the first book, Voice of War. But from my perspective, I think they're about more or less about the same in quality. They are both great. And this is most likely because I still couldn't click too well with Lauren's POV story. Somehow her storyline just doesn't feel as engaging compared to Chris and also Alvarax. But the final few chapters, the convergence that happened at the end of Stones of Light is definitely a different story. All the character storyline converge in the final few chapters, and it was so engaging. It was basically a mini Sanderlands, and I loved it. I really look forward to reading the conclusion to the trilogy, The Bonds of Chaos, this month. Hopefully that will become the best book of the trilogy for me, and then it will conclude the Threadlight trilogy satisfyingly. And that's pretty much all the books that I finished last month. As for manga volumes, as I said in the beginning of this video, I finished about 57 manga volumes. I read volume 16 up to volume 72 of Naruto by Masashi Kishimoto. This is another reread of Naruto for me. It has been several years since I read Naruto by Masashi Kishimoto. This was originally one of the big three of manga series together with One Piece by Eiichiro Oda and also Bleach by Kubo. I remember back then it was really tough for me to choose between One Piece and Naruto. Well, not Bleach because Bleach ended up disappointing me, but it was really difficult for me to choose between Naruto and One Piece. But eventually One Piece won, and that's because of the final portion of Naruto. I still think that Naruto is one of the most iconic and important manga series of all time. And if you want to try reading manga for the first time, especially fantasy manga with a lot of great magic systems and history of the characters and world, you cannot go wrong with reading Naruto. Plus, it is completed now. But the final battles, I'm trying to simplify what I'm going to say here. The final battles in Naruto after Pain story arc. I think if you have read Naruto, you will know who Pain is and the incredible storyline on that section. But after that, we are approaching the final battle, the final big war in Naruto, and that final battle lasted about 20 volumes. Yeah, the final 20 volumes of Naruto is all war section. This isn't to say that revelations and plotting did not happen during that war portion. Definitely not the case. Masashi Kishimoto is, with the caveat, Masashi Kishimoto is, in my opinion, in Naruto anyway, one of the best plotters. A lot of things were foreshadowed that I did not realize. And on this reread this time, I definitely caught on all of that, all of those foreshadowings and seeds planted since the beginning of the series. And it was really satisfying to see how all of them bloomed to fruition in the final war as well. But unfortunately, I think Masashi Kishimoto went a bit too far with the existence of Kaguya. If you haven't read Naruto, you will not know who Kaguya is. But yeah, that one definitely kinda disappointed me. Well, it disappointed me a lot. I do not think Kishimoto needed to include that after the badass villains that he already have in the final portions of Naruto. Thankfully, the ending itself is still incredibly satisfying for me. But for me, even though I felt super satisfied reading Naruto, I must say I cannot say the same about Boruto. Boruto, in my opinion, is not canon. It is awful. In my opinion, it is even offensive to those who love and have read 72 volumes of Naruto. It is so bad and it pretty much destroys everything that we love about Naruto in a very disrespectful way. Seriously, I cannot go into spoilers here, but if you are someone who loved the main characters of the previous series, you do not want your sequel series to destroy all of them unnecessarily, especially when the reason you are destroying them, it is so filled with plot holes. Okay, I'm going on a rant here, so I'm just going to stop here. But yeah, I am not a fan of Boruto at all. I'm going to DNF this one. In my opinion, it is not canon. The series ended with Naruto. And yeah, that's pretty much all the books and manga volumes that I read last month. As for my book of the month, it will have to be The Failures by Benjamin Lyer. I think it is an incredible debut. The book is not out yet, but I do think that you should check it out, especially for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. So yeah, that's pretty much all the books that I finished last month. Do tell me how many books you finished in the month of March and which one was your favorite book of the month. As always, thank you so much for watching and thank you for your support. Bye bye. Lastly, I want to say thank you so much once again to all my patrons who keep on supporting me.